Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show.
Today is Tuesday. It is May 13th, 2022, and welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show. Thank you for joining us wherever you are joining us from, whether you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, or if you're watching us on act.tv, our partners, where they encourage you to do more than watch. They want you to act. Go to act.tv./join to become a member. We're tracking this morning, late last evening. If you hold 1 second. Go. Switch for me. Welcome back. And again, welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show. It is May 3rd, 2022. We have been tracking since last night the announcement from the draft opinion coming from the Supreme Court with regards to Roe versus Wade. We are keeping our eye on that, and we're going to discuss that at great lengths today, starting with On the Clock with Georgia Ford. And we're going to be joined by Noah Changa, a friend of the show and a longtime political activist and commentator, to discuss what this means. But as always on this morning, we begin rooted in Black history. So, hey, Google, what happened today in Black history?
On May 3, 1991, the infamous Los Angeles riots came to an end after 6 days. The unrest was triggered when George Holliday filmed an unarmed black man named Rodney King becoming a victim of police brutality. According to the Los Angeles police chief, Daryl Gates, 14 officers were involved. However, charges were brought against 4 officers for excessive use of force. When the jury acquitted the 4 officers, the verdict was met with outrage, especially by the Black community, and this led to riots in LA. Adapted from Black Heritage Day calendar by author, lecturer and civil rights activist Dr. Karl Mack.
And again, you can get access to 366 days of Black history from blackheritagedays.com. This is from Black Heritage Days 4. Dr. Mack is out. He is going to be out for some time. As we expected, he is neck deep in Black history, neck deep in Black women's history, as well as Black sports history. He is working on and finalizing, putting the finishing touches on Black Heritage Days 6. So he has been diligently laying out as much of our history. And here's why that's so important. Before we get to any of the international news or national news, I want to begin with why doing this from the lens of Blackness is so important. It's so important because as we look through what's happening in today's political landscape, we see how important Black voices are to everything that is going on, not just culturally, but also politically. We were the linchpin in Georgia last year, and rather 2 years ago in 2020. Black voters were the linchpin that helped seal the deal, particularly Black young voters. The demographics came out, and it was Black millennials who helped Joe Biden win the presidency. And so, yes, we root what we do in Black history because what we're doing in our Black present is so important. And what we have to continue to do is have a lens through the past to understand that what we're doing is not new. We are an extension of our ancestors. So please go to blackheritagedays.com and get whatever version that you don't have already of Black Heritage Days and support Dr. Carl Mack as he is bringing forth. And we have a lot of great things that are coming. I don't want to spoil any of the beans there, but I will just look forward to him coming back in June. We look forward to Dr. Mack coming back in June after he's had time to put the finishing touches on all of his projects. That said, I do want to circle back to just briefly touch on and give more details as it pertains to what is going on with Roe versus Wade. I do have to saddle this conversation with a lot of back knowledge and understanding that it has been the purpose of the conservative movement to undo Roe versus Wade since it was decided. It has been the intention of the Republican Party to do this. So this should not be seen as a surprise. This is something that they have been marching towards unapologetically for decades. And now with this released opinion, it is not a final decision. It is a draft opinion that came from the court, which in and of itself is something that has never happened before. But someone leaked this, and we'll get more information on that. I want to read from Politico. The Supreme Court has voted to strike down the landmark Roe versus Wade decision in an initial draft majority opinion written by Justice Samuel Alito, circulated inside the court and obtained by Politico. The draft opinion is full-throated, unflinching repudiation of the 1973 decision, which guaranteed federal constitution protections of abortion rights, and a subsequent 1992 decision, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, that largely maintained that right. We'll discuss this a bit more throughout this episode. Again, Georgia Ford is going to discuss it with us on the clock, and Rebecca Azor will be here to discuss it with us on Like It or Not, and Noah Changa will be joining us to discuss it as well, because this is the crown jewel of a group that I think we need to clearly identify unapologetically. There is a faction in this country that has no other desire than to dominate American society through their religious dogma. They are theocratic fascists. And while they may, I know sometimes I get emails and say, Ben, stop using all the big words. I need you to understand that really precisely defines them. They are people who don't care about democracy because they believe that what they are doing in the name of Christ is more important than democracy. And if you ask them about their interpretation of Christ, they will most certainly consider me an infidel because I think Jesus was Black. So if we're talking about a particular denomination, these are people who would most certainly crush every other version of Christianity that does not meet their standard. And they have financial power, economic power, they have political power, they own politicians. And here they are now getting their crown jewel opportunity to overturn Roe versus Wade. Why? Because they are concerned about life? No. If they were concerned about children being born, then they would address the underlying issues, the overwhelming underlying issues why people make that decision, while women have to make that decision. And oftentimes they are married couples. According to the Guttmacher Institute, a high percentage of people who obtain abortions are married couples doing so after they've already had children. And they're doing so because of an economic condition. And if any of these theocratic fascists who fancy themselves to be the vanguard of the Lord Jesus Christ actually gave a damn about children, then they would address all of the things in this system that kill us every single day. And all the reasons that people who are working 60 hours a week and only making $7.25 an hour have to make that choice that, no, I cannot afford to have another child. That's just my soapbox. There's a long fight ahead of us, but I want you to really understand that there is a political and economic social movement that should be labeled accurately. They are theocratic fascists. They are religious zealots. They are extremists in the order of Osama bin Laden, and they have the majority on the bench. Quote that. I want to move forward to what's happening in Russia. Majority of Americans, rather, support Russian sanctions. A large majority of American sanctions on Russia support it. This is according to a new Washington Post ABC News poll reported on May 2nd. It found widespread bipartisan support for U.S. sanctions imposed on Russia for the invasion of Ukraine. 73% of poll respondents think that the U.S. is doing the right amount to bolster Ukraine and that the U.S. is doing too little, or that the U.S. is doing too little. Only 14% of respondents think the U.S. is doing too much to help Ukraine against the invasion of Russian forces. 13% stated that they had no opinion. There is a faction in this country that no matter what is actually happening before their eyes, they will always still undermine this mission to help Ukraine because it indirectly supports the president that's in power. I mean, there's really no other way to cut it. The Republican Party has decided to abandon foreign policy, which here until this point politics has always ended at the borders of our country, and we spoke with a unified voice. Now, while the majority of Americans do see very clearly that we should be supporting Ukraine, 73% is very encouraging. There will always be a percentage who are not tuned in and always be a percentage who, no matter what the right thing to do is, they will be willing to do the wrong thing for the expediency of their politics. I will be speaking later on in this episode with Professor Matt Sinkowitz. He's a professor of media studies at Boston College, and we're going to be discussing the Russian foreign minister and his comments as it pertains to Zelensky, tying Nazism to Zelensky's Jewish heritage. We are going to discuss the really flagrant statements that were made in the broader context of everything that is happening. So I want you to make sure that you stay tuned in for that. So many things that are happening around the country. We want you to join the conversation. Join the conversation today by leaving comments. We will be bringing and replying and answering questions through the comment section. So if you have a minute, if you have a thought and you want to participate, or if you just want to join the conversation, leave us a question and we will do our best at certain points in the show to address it, as well as getting our phone lines up. We want to make this as interactive as possible because, as we have seen on many of our phone calls, some of the brightest conversations or thoughts that come from the show actually come from our supporters. In other international news, Poland moves to help Germany drop Russian oil. This is a very interesting story because of a lot of the complexities that are happening with regard to Russia. It's based on the fact that Europe, many countries in Europe, specifically Germany, is dependent on Russian oil, and Poland is stepping in to try to break that dependency on Russia. According to Reuters, reporting on yesterday, Poland's climate minister said that the country is prepared to help Germany decrease its dependence on Russian oil. Since many EU countries rely on Moscow for energy, the bloc can't seem to agree how to sanction or how sanctions should be implemented. Poland's climate minister said in a statement, as reported by Reuters, as Poland, we are ready to support Germany's ambitions to de-Russify their refineries. I am pausing because of the boldness of that phrase, that very specific phrase, the de-Russification of their refineries. This is a bold statement from Poland's climate minister, but it really speaks to the underlying issue here. We do very clearly see on the international stage what Russia is doing to be a violation of everything that has been built post-World War II. Yet there are actors, namely Germany, on the international stage who find themselves unable to do everything that they can because of their dependence on Russian oil, which speaks to the underlying issue. Our nations have been pigeonholed and controlled by fossil fuels for so long that now we are engaged in yet something that could amount to be World War III. And at the core of it is the question of oil, Nord Stream 2. Behind almost every war that we have seen on the face of this planet has had roots in fossil fuels, in oil. And so for Poland to step in to offer this, it is a bold statement, particularly because of Poland's proximity to Russia and the fact that Poland has always had these tight this friction with Russia post the fall of the USSR. So Poland is sticking its neck out here. But more importantly is the fact that globally, if we do not move away from our fossil fuels, and we'll be talking about it at great lengths and on the clock with Georgia Ford, there are just so many reports that are showing our negligence as a species, our negligence as a civilization, as a group of collective countries. Our negligence is leading us to destruction. And one of the main reasons is because we cannot get ourselves off of fossil fuels. And it's not only destroying our planet, which is the bottom line, it's also destroying the structure and the order that we have had in this world. Not perfect by any means. I'm one of the highest and biggest critics of this order. But we most certainly understand that what Vladimir Putin desires is something that is anathema to everything that we have stood for and believe in. And that moves us right directly into this last story before we take our first break. Experts are saying that forests could begin emitting carbon dioxide. Now, as we studied and we jumped into the story last night, the headline itself is pretty shocking and meant to be shocking. But because of the scale and the scope of wildfires across this country, the amount of carbon dioxide that is going to be put out by trees burning is a staggering amount that has to be noted. It's contributing. Instead of trees being able to remove carbon dioxide from our environment, we have had so many wildfires that now we have trees and the fire and the burning of those trees contributing to the disaster. I want to read directly from the report. Wildfires have become more common in Europe and North America specifically, and now experts are saying they could begin releasing large amounts of plant warming emissions. A recent study finds that wildfires in North America's boreal forests could release nearly 12 gigatons of carbon emissions in the next 3 decades. With experts saying carbon emissions from forests in the next 30 years will equate to the annual equivalent of 2.6 billion fossil fuel powered cars. The forests, also known as Tajai, are the world's largest, most intact biome, and its ecosystem makes up 1/3 of all forests on Earth. And we are at the stage of decline where those trees, those forests now, instead of doing what they are naturally designed to do because of our recklessness, because of our greed, we are now seeing the earth turn on itself because of our actions. And yet we're not at a place where we can get this 97% of consensus of scientists to be able to move our political leaders into action. When we have 97% of consensus from scientists as it pertains to global warming, climate change, but yet we cannot get a single administration to make the move towards climate justice and a green economy, it really speaks volumes to how quickly we are barreling towards destruction and just ignoring all the signs on the wall. Listen, we're going to take a quick break. It's a little bit earlier than usual. I want to take a reset. But when we come back, we're going to be discussing all of these stories. We'll be on the clock. We're going to go forward with the conversation on Roe versus Wade. While the decision is not final, it is a draft decision. I want to make sure that everyone understands that we should not be surprised by this. We have to make sure that we are ready to fight back on this. And one of the things that, before I even go to break, one of the things I want to make sure that we say about what's going on with this decision is that we need to draw the line and hold the line. We're beyond the point, because we have to understand that this is actually Roe versus Wade was decided upon based on the Fourth Amendment, privacy, the right for a woman to have that private decision to be made between herself and her doctor. It was an issue of privacy. And we have seen that this movement of theocratic fascists, they have no problem destroying the Constitution. They will be more than happy to rewrite the Constitution. And the alarming fact is that no matter how patient and how how much we want to get back to normal. I know everybody wanted to go to brunch after Joe Biden got elected. Everybody just wanted to go back to normal. These fascists never stopped. In fact, they've never stopped working to overthrow the entirety of the 20th century since we got every victory we got was something that they added to their tally that they want to undermine. And Chief Justice Roberts was one of the first ones to do it with the decision that gutted the Voting Rights Act. And here we are with southern states all across the country, all around the Southeast, enacting policies and legislation that is absolutely meant to keep us from voting. So when I say they want to roll back the entirety of the 20th century, I don't just mean a woman's right to choose. I mean, they have already gone after our right to vote. And it is a part of the same cabal. They understand that Black people voting is their greatest threat. And they also understand that their greatest asset is having a Democratic Party who doesn't know what the hell is going on and who doesn't understand the score. Because at this point, anybody who wants to run for office needs to draw the line in the sand and say that they are willing to pack the courts, because we have the constitutional right to expand the courts. If you don't like the pack the court language, let's call it expand the courts, because we allowed, and unfortunately, the Republican Party through Donald Trump was able to stack the courts with activists, conservative extremists, all the way to the Supreme Court with the likes of Amy Coney Barrett, who I'm quite sure her entire reason for living was to get to the Supreme Court just so that she could be one of the deciding voices against Roe versus Wade. Now, we do know that this is still a draft opinion, but it is a draft opinion that is marked as the majority, which means that it is a very strong possibility that in the very near future, Roe versus Wade will no longer be the law of the land via Supreme Court decision. We'll discuss that at great lengths throughout the rest of this episode. We're going to go to a quick break. We'll be back with On the Clock with Georgia Ford. More of the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show right after this.